All right, well, may as well kick off. Welcome to the Adelaide Microsoft IT Pro Community User Group for the October meetup. I'm Andrew Young. Apologies from Brett Moffat and Matt Klein, who aren't able to make it for the in-person hosting today. I think Brett may jump online shortly just to lurk in the background. Quick housekeeping, the toilets are out through the front door, first right. Emergency exits are next to the lift on your right as you exit. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, of all past, present and emerging peoples, and those that are travelling and visiting from other parts of Australia. So, being that it's October, it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. The Australia Cybersecurity Centre is pushing its agenda this year on have you been breached or hacked? So on their website, they've got some handy links on how to find out whether you've been compromised, what are your next steps to make sure that you're not more compromised after that, and how to prevent that from happening. So have a look on their website. They generally have these little booklets that you can come up and collect afterwards. So these are the small business cybersecurity guides that we've had for the past few meetups. So yeah. Also got the Microsoft Defender for Office 365 Security Operations Guide. I've got to stop finding these mouthfuls titles. But essentially this is for all the SecOps teams to be able to pretty much configure and manage the Defender for Office. So it used to be the Advanced Threat Protection Suite for the email side of things in Office 365. So the guide will cover things like day-to-day, weekly checks, any ad hoc activities that you should be doing, and then any permissions, roles, and integrations that you'll need to be doing. So there is a MDO Ninja training you can do as well. So there's a bunch of resources, so Microsoft Learn, any tech community articles. I believe this one may or may not have a soft certificate at the end. So I say soft and in that it's not a paid exam or anything. They may have these Microsoft Forms assessments that you can take and they'll assign you a certificate of completion or participation, something like that. But handy stuff, particularly if you haven't really got a plan in place for using Defender for Office. Along that, there's also the Microsoft Purview eDiscovery Ninja training. So for those in the compliance space, this will have all sorts of resources to make sure that you're across all the eDiscovery premium solution options. And this one I missed, but Microsoft Defender for Business servers, not for servers. This one is actually protection for servers. That's Windows Server and Linux servers. It's a add-on once it becomes generally available for about $3 US, and you can add it to any Microsoft 365 Business Premium or the Microsoft Defender for Business standalone licensing. If you wanted to have a look, there is a link there, but generally you can find this in the Microsoft 365 Defender portal. That used to be the security portal. So in the settings there, you are able to pretty much go, I want my servers to be protected as well. So this, I believe Pete may correct me, but this is separate to the Defender for Cloud for Servers protection. No correction? No. So that's a pay-as-you-go kind of consumption thing through Azure. You're protecting your cloud servers as well as your on-premise servers. But the protection you'll get from this will be similar to the EDR or XDR protection that you would get from Defender for Business or Endpoint. It's also Security Cloud Week for partners. So anyone who's a partner in the room, you work at a provider and you are a Microsoft provider, you can sign up and get some training on various security and compliance, identity-related learning paths and exams. So they provide you the exam preparation content. I don't believe there's any free exams out of this one, but at least you get some handy workshops and webinars to attend. I haven't noted here, but there is also, if you've heard of the ISC Squared, they are doing a 1 million certified in cybersecurity event at the moment. So if you look up on their website, I'll send you links afterwards, but you can register for free training in cybersecurity and take a certified in cybersecurity exam at no cost. What's new in Teams? We've finally got Cameo and PowerPoint live, so you can pretty much design your slides and put your camera feed wherever you want. So then when you're presenting in a Teams meeting and you're sharing your slides, you'll show up in the slides like that. We can now choose where we download our files from a Teams chat, meeting, call. Probably a very desired option, I guess, because anything that goes into the default C users download isn't getting backed up by OneDrive or anything. So you can say, hey, stick it in OneDrive, and you've got a backup of that, and you can access it from another device. Ringtone. Look with the stain there. So they remixed the original ringtone, so you can, hope it doesn't start playing. You can get to it through your regular settings on the calls and switch it to the remix version. It does slap, so make sure you turn down your volume. So the employee experience platform, so Microsoft Viva, we've had a bunch of new things get announced in the past couple of weeks. So Viva Amplify, essentially this is a tool to help you get your message across the organization. So helping you write news articles and other Viva application related promotions. This will help you actually get to your staff across, particularly if you're a large enterprise. The whole point of using Viva and things like Yammer and SharePoint is to be able to communicate with the entire business. So this will help those who are generating content get their content out and effectively. New additions to Viva Engage. There is now a leadership corner. So this is another tool, I guess, for your leaders and team leads in the business to be able to have open discussions and get feedback from the business through news, AMAs, surveys, and other tools within Viva Engage. That's coming out next year sometime as part of the Viva Suite licensing. As well as that, there's also answers coming to the Viva Engage. So you're going to be able to crowdsource your knowledge. So essentially you are just posting questions and people will come along to the business and give you suggestions and actual answers. This does tap into using a bit of AI, so you can match your questions with existing answers. And a bit of an incentive, you do get some karma or rewards for submitting questions and answers. So if you're kind of in that space of using topics and knowledge bases, that's probably a pretty good one to keep an eye out for next year. Viva Pulse, team managers and team leaders are now able to have frequent and confidential polls and discussions with their teams, so they can get private feedback on how they're doing and their experience in the business. People in Viva, yet another app in Viva. This one pulls in information about the people in the business. So it looks through what topics they're related to, what Viva goals they've got assigned to them as well. And it gives you an idea of when they're available, what's their hybrid work preferences, are they in the office or working from home, and just any other teams that they're related to. So it's a very jacked up version of Delve, if you've used that, which is more of a document, I guess, knowledge side of things, so you can see what people are working on. This gives you an idea more of what their objectives and key results and just knowledge that they have to handle all the time. We're getting a new home page for Viva Connections, so all your apps or Viva apps will appear in the one place, and this will, I guess, complement what you've currently got in Viva Connections, so you can have your home sites displayed in Teams like this. You still get your feed and stuff, but I believe this will then shift everything around. So it's gonna, we'll see what happens. But it is nice to be able to have one Viva app in your sidebar there in Teams instead of having 10. So we'll see when that happens. And we did hear that they're going to have up to 10 home sites in Viva Connections coming next year. So a bit more targeted audiences control for this. That was a very good message. And I think I've messed up the slide. If you missed that, basic authentication was deprecated on the 1st of the month. So that means POP, IMAP, authenticated SMTP, ActiveSync. Anything that doesn't do MFA has been disabled by default on your 365 tenant. You do get an option to go through the service requests in the admin center. So you can self-service and say, I want to re-enable a specific basic auth function. So you just want IMAP, you request, and then they'll re-enable it within about an hour's time, and you can keep using it for whatever reason you're using it. But it's preferred that you move all your apps and providers across to modern authentication, so you can use multi-factor authentication and conditional access to secure your data. It is obviously Microsoft Ignite Week. So that is, I think it's tomorrow evening in the wee hours. What it is, it's one of the biggest conferences Microsoft holds. So everything from technical to productivity, sales, and partners and the like, they all come together. So there's going to be a lot of content again, as usual. It's a hybrid event. I'll correct myself from last month. So there are people in place or in person in Seattle, I believe it is. And there are 6 hot spotlight locations around the world geographically. So South America, China, London, Germany. And they'll have sort of a mini little Ignite going on there. So not quite as, I guess, as spread out as the tour was. Almost every main city had one. But yeah, definitely have a look, sign up, build out your schedule with the session builder. And yeah, I guess most of the sessions are recorded, as you may see on the website. So at your own pace, I guess. Okay, along with that, obviously the Cloud Skills Challenge. So if you sign up to one of these challenges, you can go through a learning path. And if you complete that learning path within about a month or so, you get a free exam out of it. So if you're keen to get an exam, sign up for the challenge. So Microsoft Learn had a blow up, literally. So they've redesigned the UI or the layout of Microsoft Learn. So everything's very shiny, very pink and purple. I think the word is neumorphic, potentially. But have a look at what they've done. They have also changed the training cert poster to have the same kind of feel. And part of this, they've kind of killed off the Docs or Microsoft Docs branding and URL. So everything now lives in Microsoft Learn. So that's just a single repository for documentation. So Microsoft partners, as I mentioned before, there is the Security Week coming up, but there's also a constant partner skilling program going on. So there is training, there's free exams, there's free swag. So this is a proud to be certified jumper. So if you do pass an exam and you post it on social media, fill in a form from their site, and whatever's left, there's this very limited sizing. So it's either a hoodie or a polo top. So if you get in early enough, you might be lucky. I think that was all I had for this month so far. So I will send out a link to just all these articles and resources. I know Brett's in the call, but who's staying around for pizza?
I am.
Yeah.
Just for a minute. I'll stay. Just a quick, did you say you're going to send us the slides?
More the links. So
all the links. Yes,
yeah, all the links. Yeah, I'll put it in the chat for the teams and on the meetup comments. I'll put it there as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Or I might even follow up an email. So yeah, all the links, and I'll do the write up for it as well. You'll see it there.
So I'm interested in Teams.
Yeah. So if those that have joined online and attended the meeting, there's a chat. So I'll put it in there. We'll have the YouTube link posted out anyway, and I'll add the link to it there as well.
Cool.
So I'll cover most bases. So I guess there's you're saying as well. No, just so okay. So there's 4 people, Brett, if you're listening.
Perfect, not a problem. We'll sort it out.
Where the camera is. Cool. So this month we are doing presentation tips. We've got Pete Calvert, newly assigned technical support engineer here at Microsoft, MCT and MVP alumni, founding member of this user group, I'm led to believe, and he's been presenting at user groups and conferences for well longer than I've been working. So I'll hand it over to Pete now, and leave you to it.
Thanks, Andrew. Rightio. Now, I'm hoping that you are here because you want to get some presentation tips, and you might not be a presentation expert, or you might not be, as part of your job, you're doing presentations all the time. If you are, that's fantastic. Maybe I can get some tips off you. But what we're going to do is I'm going to focus on some tips for giving presentations either in meetings or out the front of a room or online that is really designed for people that aren't doing it all the time. Okay? So when we look at things, where you are at the moment is somewhere in your job, in your vocation, in your career. You'll have done things differently in the past. You'll be doing things differently in the future. At least I hope you will, unless you really enjoy what you're doing now. Okay? And through all of that time, if you want to inform people, if you want to collaborate with people, you need to have effective communication skills. Now, there are lots and lots of courses and tips and other things out there for how to be an effective communicator, but underpinning all of those are what we call soft skills. So I'm going to, Andrew, if you want to keep an eye on the chat, just in case there are questions that come up there, because the first thing I want to do is I want to see if people know the difference between skills, talents, and gifts. Does anybody here know what the difference is between skills, talents, and gifts?
You learn your skills, but you can't be gifted or talented.
Yeah. All right. So in terms of can they be learnt, can they grow, and can you lose them? Skills, you can learn skills. If you do not have a skill, you are able to learn the skill. You are able to grow that skill over time. And if you don't use it, you can lose it. A skill might be speaking another language. A skill might be patching a server. Right. Talent is something that you have, and I'll show you how talent features in the next slide. But you don't learn talent. You don't grow talents. You don't really lose talents because you never got to learn them or grow them in the first place. Gifts, you don't learn gifts and you don't grow gifts. You're given gifts. Yep. But if you don't use them, you can lose them. So let's have a look at it this way. You might start where I'm doing something. I'm giving the presentation here and you are watching. All right? You might not have the skill to be able to deliver an effective presentation. Right? I'm not saying that you don't, or anyone online, but that may be the case for anybody watching this. I'm making no assumptions here. The skills are actually quite low and faint. If we were to evaluate you in terms of your ability to present effectively or communicate effectively, you could be classed as incompetent, and it's unconscious the fact that you are incompetent in doing so. Let you think back to presentations that you might have seen or meetings that you have been in where the person who is giving the presentation or is talking to everybody else might know their technology area really, really well. They might be a very competent admin, but in terms of presentation skills, they're incompetent and they don't know it. Would that be fair? You've experienced that before? Yeah?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. What we do is we make the person aware that they're not very good at it. All right? They're not going to invest any time or energy in learning how to be a better communicator unless they become conscious of the fact that they don't have that skill. We're already on the path of increasing the skills that they have. When they do that, I'm there to basically show you what's going on, and you are there as an assistant. You are there learning alongside. And as that skill grows, eventually the roles will switch and you will be taking the main lead on things, and I will be there to support you. Hopefully in your career, as you have learnt skills, whatever those skills might be, as you have developed, there has been a time where you have then taken responsibility for things, but the person who was there teaching you those skills or helping you along, or it might be a mentor or a coach, they've been there to assist you until you've taken the training wheels off, you're ready to go, you're saying, I know what I'm doing now. Finally, you do it, and the person who was originally doing it can sit back and watch. Now, talent allows somebody to get through all four of these stages, from incompetent and unconscious, through to being conscious, finally to being consciously competent, until finally they don't have to have it front of mind. They are unconsciously competent in what they do. They can focus on other things while they're busy doing the skill. They're talking in a language, it might be a second or third language, but they don't have to consciously be thinking about how to say things in that language. It comes naturally. Right? Somebody who has a talent will get through that process very, very quickly. And then you've got those annoying people who happen to have a gift and just seem to go straight to here. If you ask a person who has a gift in that area how they do it, chances are they won't know. Chances they'll say, can't everybody do this? I don't see why you're having a problem with this. So this is the map for how to grow skills, and what we're aiming to do is to get those soft skills, those presentation skills, those meeting skills that are underlying effective communication to unconsciously competent. A lot of people stop at consciously competent, and then they're too busy thinking about how they're presenting, or they should be thinking about the stuff they're actually presenting. Okay? So, the reason why we're doing this, and I'm not sure whether it's been your experience, but I've sort of found that since particularly the pandemic started, number of meetings have tended to increase, quality of those meetings has tended to decrease, and there's been a number of them where the distractions grow, and I'm more than happy to switch my attention away from the meeting because I'm not seeing anything of actionable impact coming out of them. Now, that's anecdotal. That's my experience. And it's also the experience of many others that I've talked to. Have you had similar experiences? Yeah, we're getting nods in the room. People on chat, give me a thumbs up, or give Andrew a thumbs up, or a happy face if that's the similar experience for you. So this drove me to the point of saying, if this is frustrating me, but I've got some skills to be able to assist others in improving their skills, maybe I can't fix everybody's meetings, but if I can fix some people's meetings so that they can go from unconsciously incompetent to being conscious that there is an incompetence there, and then push them on the path, hopefully next time I'm in their meeting, I'll have a much better experience. Fair call? All right. So this is where there'll be homework for those of you who are here, is that you'll hopefully be able to carry this forwards. We have got all these things to do and all these things to learn. And you'll notice, because this is the IT Pro user group, I've snuck PowerShell in as something that you need to know. But we've got that limited time to learn, develop and improve and consolidate the skills that we need when all these other things are clamoring for our attention. Yeah? Okay. So there's training. And what we've found is that in the training market, things have gone from these large full-scale courses, you're away for a week, you're learning all this stuff, through to what we call microdose training. You might have it with computer-based training online, where you get to do little nuggets of things, time, bit here, bit there, at your own pace. And the size of each of these components over time has actually gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, until now there are a large number of training providers. LinkedIn Learning is one of them. EDX is doing some others. Pluralsight has some others, where you can snack on 5 to 15 minute blocks of training.
You see trainings on TikTok.
People are doing training on TikTok. Yes. And YouTube used to have some of those ones as well. There's been a progression towards these shorter format training blocks. Absolutely. So my intention is to coin a phrase. These are soft skills sliders. I want the learnings that you're getting to be able to be taken away and practiced, consolidated, so they become unconscious rather than conscious skills. You might have heard the expression, the way to get good at public speaking is to do public speaking. The way to get good at presenting is to present. That's horrible for somebody who has a fear of public speaking, and they think the only way I can practice is by actually doing it. That's scary as hell. So what I'm saying is that we need to get to the point where the training that we're giving people can be done safely, in a comfortable situation, in something that can be done and done and done until it becomes habitual, so that when you actually do get to doing a presentation, whether it's in a meeting or a user group or a conference in front of thousands of people, that the soft skills that underlie that, you don't have to think about them. You can just concentrate on what you know. Makes a good experience for everyone. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through some soft skills sliders. Now, I've sort of developed around about almost 20 of these, but we don't have time to run through all of them. So our menu for today, we're going to cover those that I think are most relevant and I see most problems with in the meetings that I've been part of. We're going to look at vocal speed. We're going to look at acronyms and jargon. We're going to look at takeaways, which is funny for drive-through, I suppose, and time estimation. Now, each of these apply to in-person meetings, hybrid meetings, online meetings. And then at the end, we're going to cover energy levels and owning spaces pretty much for you guys. It's very hard for me to demonstrate energy levels and owning spaces to people that are just online or watching this. At the bottom, I've got my Twitter address, my WordPress blog, which is woefully unpopulated, but there's some articles that are relevant to this topic on there. My LinkedIn, and if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, tell me that you were, give me a message saying that you were in part of this session. Otherwise, I'll just say I don't know who you are, and email address if you need to contact me. Okay. Are we ready to get going? We're going to cover these fairly quickly. First one, vocal speed. Vocal speed is defined at the pace or tempo at which one speaks. The benefits of being able to control your vocal speed are a reduction in the number of vocal tics and awkward pauses. Think back to somebody who might be saying like, or when they're talking quite quickly, and then they keep on talking, and there's these pauses, and the long pauses are them waiting for them to think of the next thing that they are going to be saying. If you slow down the speed at which you are talking, it is still perfectly understandable what you are doing, as long as you're not sounding like Captain Kirk, where the pauses are in the wrong places. But it becomes a lot easier for you to catch up mentally to where you need to be, and any pauses that you do have aren't as noticeable. Second, if there are recordings that are being viewed, remember we don't have much time. We've got limited time. I tend to watch recordings on 1.5 or 2 times speed. If I can't understand what is being said at 1.5 or 2 times speed, because the person who was talking too fast to begin with, I'm going to question, is it really worth me investing time in listening to the rest of it? If it's a topic I'm really interested in and they catch me up, I might prioritise it. But if I've got other things to do or learn, it'll go back down the queue. If it is something that I can listen to at a fast speed, I will listen to it at a fast speed, and if something catches me and I go, oh, what was that again? It's easy for me to replay it. You're doing yourself a favour by allowing people to speed up what you're listening to. How many of you listen to podcasts at faster than ×1? Yep. It also aids transcription and translation services, including sign language. I gave a presentation to the Deaf-Blind Society of Australia, and we had an ASL interpreter up there with me, translating as I was talking for those who were deaf. I still had to stand in front of the projector so that they could hopefully lip read, but I was watching them most of the time, watching the ASL interpreter. And I had to, because one, they get tired signing a lot, so they had to keep swapping over to the next person, which was good. But I didn't want to get too far ahead. They have to hear what I'm saying, think, what is it that I'm saying, and translate it into sign language. You have the same thing for conference presentations. You might have seen the captioning that runs underneath the person who is speaking. Do you ever notice those words underneath the person who is speaking appearing before the person says the words? No, because they haven't said them yet. Do you ever notice those words appearing well after someone has said the words? That's normally because they're talking too fast. If they're talking a bit slower, it aids clarity in those transcription services being able to pick up what's being said and then broadcast it through text. Okay. People who are non-native speakers of the same language that you are using, they appreciate time to able to process and translate in their own mind what is being said. And by slowing things down a bit and keeping the words more separate from each other, rather than running them all together so that it's really hard to find out what's going on, it also helps understanding. Okay. Finally, when people present, they tend to be a bit nervous, and nervousness goes into speeding you up. And if you are passionate about a subject, the natural inclination is to speed up as well. So for each of these sliders, these learnings, I've got some exercises. These are exercises that you can do when you're not presenting, so that when you are having to contribute during a meeting or present something, you've already practiced these and they become habitual. So the first one, during any conversation that you have, just be conscious of how quickly you are speaking and maybe slow it down a bit and see if there is any effect. If you slow it down too much, someone might ask if you're drunk. However, that only tends to happen if you start slurring your words together as well. If you listen to podcasts or recordings at various speeds, see how fast you can speed it up before it becomes really difficult to understand. You'll find that most of the popular ones, you can actually speed them up a fair bit before they become too fast to follow. And if you are listening to a podcast regularly at a higher speed, go back and listen to it at 1 speed. It'll sound really, really odd to start with, but it doesn't take long that if you listen to it at 1 speed, things will reset and it will sound quite normal and natural. You want to be sort of running along at that cadence. You don't have to be in a meeting or giving a presentation for these exercises to be done. And finally, if you have a podcast or a speech that you've got, read it along with the person who's actually saying it and see if you can match the speed. You'll probably find that the speed at which you would be reading something off a page is actually a lot slower when you're reading alongside somebody who's one of your favourite podcasters or presenters. Okay. These exercises, things that you think you could do, you could try? Yeah? All right. Acronyms and jargon. Acronyms and jargon are the shorthand ways that we have of referring to professional terms or jingoistic terms. The trouble that we have with this is that sometimes we reuse the same acronyms for multiple things or the same jargon terms for multiple things, or people just interpret those terms as different things. So let me ask the question. If you receive a text message from somebody and it's got LOL at the bottom of it, what does that mean?
Laughing out.
Sorry?
Laugh on loud.
Laugh out loud. There's a story of a woman who would receive texts from her daughter a lot with LOL at the end, until she received one from her about a friend who had, about something that was funny, but hardly valuable to her. And there was an LOL, and she thought LOL was lots of love. And she thought, why is she sending me lots of love about this silly little thing?
Yeah.
So all the time her mother was receiving these things and thinking how wonderful her daughter was by sending her texts with lots of love at the end, and really it was just laugh out loud. So misuse of acronyms can be embarrassing sometimes. Whenever I run workshops on migrating things from on-premises to Azure, one of the terms that comes up is reposting servers. Depending upon which vendor you talk to, and even within Microsoft, which group you talk to, rehost can mean different things to different people. If I was taking a backup of a server and an image of that server and then just deploying that image into Azure, is that rehosting? What if I created a new machine with the same operating system as on-prem and reinstalled all the applications in Azure? Is that rehosting?
Yes.
They're two different things. What if it was a newer operating system and I reinstalled the application in exactly the same way as it was on-prem? Is that rehosting? Where do we draw the line between rehosting and replatforming? Where do we draw the line between replatforming and refactoring and re-architecting? Depending upon who you talk to, they'll have different ideas. If you talk to a database team, rehosting, they don't care what happens at the server level, as long as the database is the same, it doesn't matter. So this is where, be aware of the acronyms and jargon that you're using. If you are using acronyms and jargon, if I talked about ROI, if I talked about XRM, if I talked about TCP/IP, I'm deliberately excluding people who don't know what those acronyms mean. Now, it's a good way of identifying those in your tribe. It's good for interview questions, perhaps, to weed out people that don't necessarily know what's going on. I had an interview once where somebody was asking me whether I had knowledge of MPS. I didn't know what MPS meant, because MPS, this was for a web service, looking after web hosting. MPS could mean Microsoft Personalization Service, which sounds about right. Microsoft Policy Service or Service. Turned out they were talking about Microsoft Proxy Server. But because they didn't explain what the acronym meant, it meant there was a misunderstanding of what they were actually talking about. So we want to make sure we've got inclusive behaviour, we want to reset assumptions, and we want to make sure that when we start talking and having dialogue about things, we're talking about the same stuff. So the exercises for this, if you see an acronym somewhere, just mentally expand it. Do I know what this actually is, or am I just skipping over it? Whenever I'm proofing or editing somebody else's work, the first time I see an acronym used, if it isn't expanded, I will expand it if I know it. If I don't, I will put a comment saying, please expand. If there's lots of them, I'll suggest maybe having a glossary. If you see any unfamiliar acronym or hear it being used, ask what it means. At a team meeting in a previous role that I had at Microsoft, where the manager said we need to get away from using acronyms so that we all understand what we're talking about. And the very next meeting, he started talking about one of the systems that we use the acronym for it, and I said, excuse me, just want to check, when you say da da da, are you meaning the name of the system? He goes, yes, yes, good pull up. All right. We do it unconsciously. We need to get from that unconscious incompetent through to unconsciously competent, where every time we see jargon being used or an acronym being used, unless it is absolutely clear to everybody who is going to come across it what it means, expand it. If you are writing documentation or notes, you don't know who's going to read it. And acronyms change over time. You might want to consider how you would explain a jargon term being used to someone who's unfamiliar with it. And once again, double check that there could be multiple interpretations of things. Maybe just throw the term and say, what is your understanding of this jargon term? And if it jives with what you think, all good. If it doesn't, you've learned that there can be a disconnect. It doesn't take much to do that, does it? Takeaways. What's in it for me? You're thinking, what are my takeaways? For this session, it's giving you some exercises that you can do which will hopefully help build your soft skills in terms of presentations. Your takeaway might well be, I want to be entertained. Cool, I'm not going to put on a top hat and dance, but if this is entertaining for you, then fantastic. Your takeaway might well be, I really want, I'm a sadistic bastard and I want to see the presenter suffer from this fear of public speaking and be really awkward out the front. I'm sorry, you won't be able to take that takeaway today. All right. But this is where every time you are investing time in a meeting or a presentation, you are doing so because you are expecting to get something out of it, even if it's pizza at the end. So the benefits of having clear takeaways of what you are going to get from the meeting or presentation: goal clarity, expectation setting, so that the people who are there will have their expectations able to be met. We will also help to avoid going off on tangents. Where are we drawing the boundaries? Which will lead us to another topic. And then it makes us focus on the value of the meeting. If these are the takeaways that I'm expecting people to take away, I need to make sure that I hit those and give priority to those rather than other things. So the exercises. Reflect on something that you have learnt and see if you can summarise it in a sentence. The idea behind this is that if you have to tell somebody what they are going to get out of a session where you are showing them something, can you explain it to them in a sentence, even if it has taken you a year to learn? It might be one step in a long journey. If you are putting an agenda together, or a little blurb or abstract saying what this presentation is about, can you summarise it so that it is clear of what's going on? This helps to clarify your goals. Look at a meeting invite that you have received and then see, by analysing that, does this meeting invite tell me what I'm going to get out of it? Or am I only attending it because my manager will be there or my boss will be there and he'll notice my absence? And that could be something that you will get out of it. Brownie points with the boss or manager. Okay? Doesn't matter what the content is. Hopefully, though, it's a meeting where the content will also give you something out of it. If you've attended a meeting, have a look at the invite and check and see if it jives with what you actually got out of it. I'm hoping this is an easy exercise to do because there was a post which you would have seen that said what this presentation was going to be about today. Go back afterwards and reread it and see if it aligns with what we've covered today. And it's not just the content that's involved in the takeaway here. part of the takeaway can be that person was really knowledgeable. That person was easy to understand. That person was really funny or entertaining. There are contextual takeaways that you might be able to get out of things as well. But consider, from what you've learned, can you summarise it? And it's not just the content things. It might be, I learned that he talks too long, or too loud, or something else. The last one I've got for the online hybrid meetings is time estimation. I would hazard a guess and say that you've had at least one meeting in the last year which has run overtime. I can run this overtime if you want. What's the problem with running things overtime?
These are people's agenda.
You're not respecting the time that they've committed to this.
Yeah.
So, by being able to estimate how long you actually need to do something and sticking to that, you are then, the benefits mean that you can cover all the things that you need to cover during that time. You're not making people choose between conflicts. I've got a meeting I have to go to now. I have to go and pick up the kids. I thought we would be finished by this time because that's when you said we would be finished. You are respectful of others' time. There's been many times when I've gotten on to talk. I've been allocated a certain amount of time, but the person behind me has run over by more than half of that. That's not being respectful. It also means that you are developing a greater awareness of time and enabling the better prioritisation of that time. So the exercises that we've got, take any task, having a shower, eating a meal, whatever it happens to be. Walking from here to there, and guess how long it's going to take you, and then when you've done it, check and see how long it actually took you. The more you do this, the more you get an appreciation of how long it actually takes to do things and how good your estimating skills are. For any phone call, after you've finished the phone call, if you've got one that tells you how long the duration was, and most phones will do that now, Teams calls will do that, guess how long it took before you look at the time and see if that is about right. Take a page from a book and read it aloud and guess how long you will take to read that page. And then you can use reading faster or slower to try and match different times. That's an advanced exercise. But these are all exercises that will help you develop a greater awareness of time. Okay. So for those of you watching online or watching the recording, that's about it in terms of the stuff that's going to be relevant and accessible or understandable for this session. What I'm going to dive in now in the last few minutes we've got are some things that are really only demonstrable in room. So, first is energy levels. Have you ever been in those meetings where it gets slower and more tired and things just tend to go down and down? That's the normal pace of meetings. And you've got somebody who's presenting and they really aren't keeping your interest. So you check your phone, you check your email, you look at other things. You hope they don't go on and on. The benefits of keeping the energy levels up are it engages those who aren't talking. It keeps the meetings and presentations from dragging, and it channels nervousness. If you have nervous energy because of having to present, channeling that into providing energy not only lifts your vocal levels so that people can hear you more clearly, but it gives a positive use for that energy. That energy is now lifting the entire room rather than causing you to stress. So the exercises for that. Try and identify people who are energy emitters versus those who are energy sinks. Right? you'll think back on it and you'll think there's this person who when I get on with them, I just feel drained after spending time with them. They're an energy sink. There are others who, if you are around them, you go, I feel really good. I feel energized. They're energy emitters. They might not even be consciously aware that they are doing it. See if you can set your energy level to match those that are around you. Although be careful you don't go into a death spiral with an energy sink. And if you are presenting, this is the goal. Set your energy level to about 10% above where you want the audience to be. That's what I have been doing. I'm not expecting you to be matching my energy level. I'm expecting you to be a bit under that energy level, but not right down here. And I'm not right up here. I'm not developers, and causing you to go, oh my goodness, what have we gotten ourselves into? I'm keeping myself at this level. This is something that you are able to practice. It requires effort to start with, but once you become unconsciously competent at this, you will do it automatically. It lifts the entire room. Not so good for online audience. Okay? Very hard to do that. There are some, it can work, but there's no guarantees. You really don't know what's happening on the other end of the screen. And the very last one, owning the spaces, and we might want to have a practice with this at pizza. We all have personal boundaries. These boundaries are what we tend to set ourselves. Have you seen where somebody from the city is talking to somebody from the country, and the person from the country keeps on backing away, and the person from the city keeps on getting closer and closer and closer to them? That's because where we are, we're a lot more packed in, and we set our personal boundaries a lot closer to us. If you're on a bus or a train, you have this little shell around you, and if anybody touches you or gets within, say, a few centimetres of you, they're too close. But if they're 5 centimetres away on a crowded train or bus, yeah, that's okay. All right? In the country, if you're within a couple of metres of them, you're too close. They're used to the space, right? Their personal boundaries are out there. You go to a country bush dance versus one that's got city folk in it, you'll see the difference in how people are standing and talking to each other. If you are watching a presentation and you feel that the person who is presenting has got a wall across the front, an invisible wall across the front, and you could be looking at your phone, you could be talking to your neighbour, you could be falling asleep, and they wouldn't notice, then that's that boundary issue. What I've done is I've drawn that boundary to the edge of this room. So I have included you inside my personal boundary while I'm presenting. While Andrew was up here, I pulled myself back so that I was not owning this space, because I wanted attention to be on him, not on me. If you are in a meeting or a presentation and you have the floor, or you are doing the presenting in room, see if you can push your personal boundary space so that it encompasses everybody who you want to be in that space. The easiest way to explain this would be at home. If you've got a party in your house, or people, visitors over in your living room or whatever else, that's your space. They are within your space. You are actually more aware of what is going on in that space than most other people are aware of. If you are at somebody else's house at a party, your personal space is drawn basically around you. This is what we unconsciously do. If you've got a CEO of a large organisation, or a movie star, or a famous rock musician, and they walk into a room, everybody notices. Why? Because their personal space is drawn way out there. You suddenly become aware of being inside their space. So if you are in a meeting or there is a presentation going on where you feel that that person has a connection with you, no matter how many people are in the audience. They've actually drawn their space to include you. And the vast majority of people who do that have no idea that that's what they're doing. If you ask them, how did they develop this presence? They'll say, oh, it's just being confident. Or it's just being comfortable in the environment within which you're presenting. No. That's an outcome of the boundaries that we draw. So the last thing I'll leave you with is the exercises for this. And I said we can talk about this and can practice this if you want. Become aware of the boundaries that you are setting. I can actually sense what your boundaries are at the moment, and that's because I've practiced it a lot, because I've identified where others are drawing their boundaries. Practice increasing and decreasing those boundaries in a safe space. Your house, your workplace where you know everyone. Just think about it there. Social settings with friends. And then public spaces, on a bus, on a train, in a food court, in line for something. Practice increasing your boundaries and seeing what happens. I'll do that sometimes when walking through a crowded area, because I'll push my personal boundaries out, and you'd be surprised the number of people that sort of give you room. Useful little trick. And then once you've sort of gone through this process of being aware of these boundaries, try doing it while in meetings. And you should find that it improves the audience engagement. It increases the awareness your awareness of what's happening in the room. Your confidence will actually increase because this is your space. You're not in somebody else's space or fighting to get past an invisible barrier that you're not even aware of. And it will improve the clarity of articulation. So we can practice this, but you will find that it is easier to understand what somebody is saying if they are saying it in your space. You are in their space. And I'll do that one demonstration. We'll run a little bit over, do one demonstration to show what that's going on. I'm going to, all right, I'll draw my boundaries back so that they're actually front seat here. You are in different space from me. So you're probably feeling, you're hoping that you're feeling that there's less of a connection there and there's less of that engagement. Whereas if I now increase my boundary so that you are within that boundary, I'm noticing the smiles, there's more of that connection. You feel that there is that link that is happening. Right? You can only get this through practice, and don't wait for a meeting to do it. Instead, we can practice afterwards. Is that useful? Do you have some takeaways from this? Absolutely. That's right. Excellent. Andrew would love your feedback. But otherwise, we'll say goodbye to those who are online and close the call.
Cool. Thank you. Great talk.
Thanks. Online community. See you next month.
Those are not coming up, miss up. Feel sorry for that.